screen in that case. Apologies again for the drama with me joining.
It's fine. You don't need to stay now. That's fine.
Can you just confirm? Could you just confirm that you could see my screen? Hello?
Yes, I can see your screen, Christina. Yeah.
Sorry, wasn't sure if you could hear me there. Okay, so yeah, just a brief introduction to myself. So my name is Christina Dumitriu Jackson, and I'm currently a laboratory scientist apprenticeship here at AstraZeneca. I'll give you a bit of an introduction into kind of my day-to-day life as an apprentice and as kind of my journey to how I got here and what that sort of looks like, and then also sort of an insight into the science that I do. Hopefully it's kind of at a level that everyone's able to follow. I know not everyone's sciencey, but I think it'd be great if I could kind of share with everyone so that they can kind of follow and have an understanding into what I do rather than you know, too high detail sort of content. So yeah, it'd be great to keep everyone engaged. So my journey to AZ, so I actually did A-levels, studied at sixth form in Hertfordshire, so kind of just stayed from sort of the same secondary school all the way through to sixth form there, where I did my A-levels in chemistry, biology and psychology, and then I did an EPQ on the side and decided to do something sort of pharmaceutical related. So I did that in digital medicine. And then around January sort of time of year 13, I realised that degree apprenticeships existed. So I actually branched out and found one at AZ and applied, and luckily was successful. So now I am studying an undergraduate degree at Manchester Metropolitan University. So if you haven't heard of a degree apprenticeship and how they sort of work, you essentially will get your degree at the end, but you kind of do one study day a week and then 4 days in the workplace with your company, with your team. So for me, I'm in the Peptide Chemistry group, and I spent 4 days there. That's kind of a mixture between sort of lab work and office work. I'll touch on that a little bit more later. And then 1 day is university day. So because my sort of job is based in Cambridge, obviously I can't make it up to Manchester for 1 day each week. So I'm actually here at the minute. So we come here a few times a year, and you are more than welcome to come here if you did live nearer, or there's multiple different universities that kind of do this course. So you're more than welcome to always go up there, but it's not always a possibility. So you kind of do that 1 day online learning. So you do have live sort of webinars and all your resources, but you don't actually go to the university, obviously as much as you would as a full-time student. So I'm into my second year now. So I started in 2021, and that was my first kind of job and experience in the pharmaceutical industry. So degree apprenticeships, why should you consider one? And I've got some pictures of a career fair and me at a conference there. So firstly, your finances. So if you do a degree apprenticeship, you essentially come out with no debt because you're not paying for your degree. You're sort of sponsored by your company, which is really, really good, and it's an amazing opportunity. So financially, it's better because you kind of earn a salary as you are working full time for the company, and then also your degree is funded for you. So that's a really, really big benefit. And then you have the opportunity to work with and be taught by experts. Again, probably one of my favorite things about it. I'm a great advocate for the scheme, but I work around experts, you know, in the field, and they teach me and I gather their experience, and they kind of nurture me and help me grow. And they always have time for you. You can ask infinite questions, no matter how silly you think they are. So it's really the best place for me personally to kind of have that hybrid approach with, you know, your university and your learning, but then also you relate that to the workplace. And some apprenticeships you rotate into different groups. Some you stay in the same group. So I stay within my group, but I have the opportunity to shadow people and network, make connections, and meet loads of people throughout the company. So you can kind of, by the end of it, you've got more of an idea of where you want to go next. So that kind of links in with the point of expanding my network and skill set. So there's so many skills now that I couldn't do a year ago when I joined. So I can imagine in 3 years, 3.5 years when I finish, there'll be even more that I've learned. So it kind of really helps your independence, and it really helps to build your portfolio as well, as there's so many opportunities in AstraZeneca, and I know other companies as well. And you do get to be part of a really, really great community of scientists and early talent and apprentices as well. I know at AstraZeneca we've got a few hundreds now, so you're definitely not alone. And there's many, many apprentices usually when you do join on the same apprenticeship as you, whether that's older ones or people joining at the same time. So that really does build your community. So degree apprenticeships, sort of misconceptions, common doubts. So obviously there is a cost. You could see things as a cost, but some things are sort of myths rather than the reality. So a lot of people say, well, what about the university experience? Do you miss out on that? Do you still kind of get a uni experience? What's that kind of like? So for me personally, I would always say, to be honest, I did apply to university. I got into university. I nearly went to university, but I'm very glad that I didn't, because I kind of didn't realise what degree apprenticeships were, and I didn't know anyone that had done one. So it was a little bit risky because you didn't have the sort of typical, maybe in school, I hope now it's a bit different and it's more spoken about, but while I was in school, it was just kind of touched on and nobody knew too much and you didn't really know anyone specifically. So I hope this is kind of helping, and we're evolving that degree apprenticeship space now. But in terms of the university experience, so obviously you have full-time work in university as well, but you have your weekends if you ever want to visit your friends at uni, or as I said, there's a great community of apprentices. That's a picture in the bottom left of some of them, some of ours in Cambridge. And people do live out, people do move to do the scheme. So this year, the new starters, a couple of them moved in together and sort of had a house, which would be kind of similar to a uni experience, sort of living out. But yeah, I mean, as a sociable person, you have more flexibility to sort of travel and do things like that. And you do have your weekends, and you can do with that what you want to. For some people, degree apprenticeships might be attractive because maybe they're not so up for the typical uni experience, but if that's still something you want to experience, you could easily do that. And then time management as well. So obviously a degree and a full-time job is a lot, especially coming straight out of school, but it's something that you kind of work on and you get to know, and you have a lot of support, and it is all very doable. You do have a whole day to do your uni work, and normally that's more than enough, but if not, you can communicate that with sort of your managers, your supervisors, and you really have that support networking problem solving basis sort of there. And I think it is one of those skills that over time you naturally just become better at. And it's one of those things that if you did go to uni and you went into a job after, it's something that you'd still juggle and work on and face regardless. But I think just kind of doing it a bit earlier in your career. And then, yeah, kind of touch on social life as well, linked in with the uni experience. But, you're working for, usually in degree apprenticeships, companies, big companies, and there's loads of company-wide events. So like for us, for example, there's Christmas dinners, Christmas lunches, during National Apprenticeship Week. You also have sort of celebrations as well. So there's kind of those corporate events, which are really, really nice, and in work sort of events and small things like coffee mornings and things like that. That are really enjoyable. So just a bit about my roles. Like I previously sort of mentioned, I'm at AstraZeneca. My department's discovery sciences, so very research focused, and I'm a peptide chemist. Got a picture there of our new discovery centre, which is going to be sort of the AstraZeneca hub, and that will be in central Cambridge. It's a picture of me and some of my colleagues in my lab down below. So yeah, I'm part of the peptide team based in Cambridge, and my role is split between the lab and the office. So mostly in the lab doing peptide synthesis and, you know, working as a scientist, but also what surprised me was a lot more time in the office than I expected, whether that be meetings to do with sort of outreach things or the apprentice committee, sort of diversity groups or project meetings, team meetings, one-to-ones. There's a lot more kind of communication and people working in science in my role than I actually realised, and I really, really love that because I just love working and talking to people, and so that really makes it for me. Yeah, so my key role, obviously, yes, as a chemist synthesizing the molecules, and then my degree in chemistry, that's a really, really big part of this, and you know, that is always appreciated, it's never overlooked. And yeah, as I mentioned, outreach activities sort of as an apprentice, which is great. So an example in the sort of day in the life of a research chemist. So for me, obviously it's slightly different for everyone, but day-to-day work sort of entails drug discovery, and hopefully those sort of drugs that we engineer eventually reach patients. We are patient focused, so everything we kind of do, we have, you know, we're always thinking of what's best for the patient, and that's what we're striving towards. But yeah, we work in highly collaborative teams. What that means is, you know, you have different teams of scientists that do different things, but everyone works together, and that's something that I've really seen, sort of the culture, everyone's collaborating and sharing ideas, working together, coming together to produce that end product, which will be the medicine that will go, you know, onto the patients. But that's really, really key, that you kind of can't progress without being collaborative and working together. So there's always variety, no day's the same, and there is loads of multitasking with meetings and outreach things and in-person interactions, opportunities, things like conferences, coming to uni, and then obviously your full-time work as well. There is loads of multitasking, but like I said, time management is a skill that you kind of build on, and prioritization is key. That's something you kind of learn as you're going, and I'm still working on. In terms of me, I set up my peptide synthesizer. Peptide is a sequence of amino acids, if you would know what that is. So most of you know what protein is. A protein is something that's greater than 50 amino acids, and a peptide is something that's less than 50 amino acids. So that might help you understand sort of the scale of it and what it is. So on the synthesizer, you put your sequence in, and it basically makes the peptide. Then you might have some manual chemical reactions. So you might want to add linkers on, for example, a lipid. That's basically, if you wouldn't know what that is, it's sort of almost like fat. And the reason why we do that is because peptides are easily, as proteins, engulfed by enzymes, which you may have heard of. So to make them sort of unrecognizable by the body, we add on these extra things like linkers or unnatural amino acids, which are amino acids that we don't have native in our body. We then purify that product and sort of send it for testing, and then it kind of comes back to us, and you go back and forth and kind of edit that sequence and add new things in, which is the variety, and that's why everything's different, because you're always making a different sequence and adding something else on. Just a bit about AZ. So science and innovation led. Our main therapy areas are oncology, CVRM, which is cardiovascular, renal and metabolism, and respiratory and immunology. And that's sort of a diverse portfolio for our patients, and we're very committed to people and society, as well as the environment as well. So that new building that I showed you, we're moving towards zero carbon emissions, which is really, really big. Didn't know if you knew this, but fun fact, the pharmaceutical industry actually is worse for the environment than the aviation one. So that's sort of all your airlines, which is really interesting. So we're striving towards giving back to our environment and yeah, improving that as a company. In terms of our R&D sites, so you've got the main Cambridge site, which is the one I work at, and then you've got Gothenburg in Sweden, and you've got Gaithersburg, which is in America, in Maryland. We have sites all over the world, but those are our sort of main R&D, and R&D stands for research and development. yes, I kind of mentioned our key therapy areas, but the generation of, generating new therapeutics. So as well as peptides, which is what I work with, we have small molecules, which are essentially chemical molecules. We have antibodies, which you may have heard of. We have nucleotides, which you may not have heard of, but it's basically sort of to do with DNA. And we have cell-based therapeutics. So those are sort of the types of medicines that we have and we engineer and we work with. In terms of the life cycle, so AstraZeneca is actually a handful of the few companies that actually work throughout the whole drug discovery process. So we start with finding our potential medicine, and we work on that and go into various different studies to make sure that that's kind of safe and quality check, and then we go all the way through till the end, which is delivering that medicine to the patient. So we really do touch bases with each part of the process. So you can imagine it does take a long time. It takes years usually from when a drug has been discovered, or we've got potential medicine, to when it's actually delivered in clinic. It takes a really, really long time just because of the safety and everything. That's why the COVID vaccine, which you may have heard of, is really, really impressive that we managed to deliver that so quickly, because there are vigorous quality and safety checks and clinical trials and studies. So it's really, really amazing that we delivered it when we did. So just a bit more about peptides. So like I kind of mentioned, they're small proteins made from amino acids. That shows you the structure of amino acid there. They're a type of polymer. So your amino acids, your individual monomer, and those will be linked together via amide bonds to give you sort of your polymer. And yeah, like I mentioned, the peptide is less than 50 amino acids, and your protein could be more than. That kind of distinguishes your difference. So how do we design peptides as new medicines? So like I mentioned, the problem with peptides is they are easily recognized by enzymes. So as a medicinal chemist, which is what I am, we can engineer the peptide to be more resistant to enzymes to reduce the rapid clearance of natural peptides from the body. So if you have a look here, there's a peptide sequence there. The grey is sort of your natural amino acids. And you can see that there's enzyme cleavage and renal clearance. So it's kind of cleared in your urine and broken down very, very quickly and very easily. With our engineered sequence here, you can see there's a few coloured beads added. Those are unnatural things. You also have that kind of tail on the end. That's your linker. And that basically, if you look at the two, as the body, you wouldn't recognise that second one. So it's not broken down by enzymes as quickly. Eventually it will be, but it's not recognised as quickly, which means it can be delivered to the target and it can, do its function, as well as kind of working on peptides being more resistant to enzymes. We also look for potency, selectivity, biophysical characteristics. So that could be solubility. So if I make a sequence and I can't dissolve it in water, I sort of know it's not going much further from there at that point, because if it can't dissolve in water, there'll be infamous problems from that point onwards. And sort of delivery methods. So will it be an injectable or a tablet? So that's sort of, you would kind of create your peptide tailored to how you know it will be delivered. So if you know it's a tablet, that's something that we're currently working on, but it's more challenging because of the journey that it has to undergo to get to that target, whereas an injectable is much easier, but obviously not as ideal for patients, which is why we're into the future looking into delivering peptides as tablets. So yeah, so they are abundant in biology and natural products. So on the screen here, there's some examples of peptides, things you might have heard of. So insulin, very, very common one, most people would have heard of. For people with diabetes, that's actually a peptide. You may or may not have known that. So it was one of the first on the market. And then some other ones on the screen here too, if you were interested. In terms of peptide medicines on the market, so yeah, the first was insulin in the 1920s. and we're now advancing, and you know, into the future there's more and more sort of peptide drugs approved in the clinic. You can see sort of pie chart there shows 5% of sort of the medicines on the market are peptides. From the 60s to now, you've got massive increase in the number of peptide drug approvals. Another chart here kind of shows what therapy areas peptides can be used for, which is great because it's actually a diverse number of therapy areas, from oncology to metabolic to cardiovascular, all sorts, which is really, really interesting moving into that space. Yep, and then just a bit about peptide discovery. It's an iterative process. So like I said, you have that sort of engineering and design at first. So you always usually start with something from nature, and you kind of edit that and engineer it for whatever you wanted to target and create. And then you have that synthesis in the lab, which is what I do in the lab. And then you kind of bounce back between that synthesis and that testing. Sort of bounce back and forth, and then in vivo testing as well, so then kind of get into animal studies and clinical things like that, and then you're still bouncing back with us to kind of optimize that peptide for it to be the best, and we can sort of create that lead structure. Just a quick sort of few pictures, quite a few old pictures actually, and this is where we are at the moment, but we're moving to the new building. Just a quick photo of my lab. On the left, you can see you've got different sort of sections, so everyone kind of has their own section in their own hood that they work in. That's a peptide synthesizer on the right, so that will make your peptide, so you'll kind of feed it amino acids, and it will give you a peptide at the end. And then purification, when you've got that peptide, just to purify it, sometimes there's a bit of gunk and rubbish that's also made along with your peptide, so we just purify that, so you know we've just got what we want. And then that's another synthesizer there as well on the right. So just a few things I wish I'd known before starting my apprenticeship. So get involved with as much as you can manage, whether that be sport or clubs or being prefects in school, things like that. It's all experience. It's great to work with as many people as you can. So do all that you can manage. Don't be afraid to think outside the box and push the boundaries and be different. Imposter syndrome is very, very common, I'd say, at the start of things, probably even university. It's when you're kind of thinking, why am I supposed to be here? Why me? But, you know, use the network that you have and speak up about it. And yeah, you're always not alone. You're not the only one. And have loads and loads of fun. So that's everything. Just thought I'd put in a little bit of time for Q&A. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And I hope you enjoyed and that was useful. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Christina. That was really, really informative. Does any of your students actually have any questions at all for Christina? Maybe they're thinking of following her career path and studying chemistry at uni. You can either pop them into chat or you can come off mute and ask them out.
I can get the chat up as well. Yeah, I'm not sure what age group exactly students we have here, but I hope that was useful and everyone was able to follow
So
it.
we've actually got quite a mixture of students on the call. We've got 57 students altogether. We've got some Key Stage 5 and 6th form, and we've also got some Year 8s.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how old the students from Camborne are.
Lovely. If anyone has any questions sort of after the call, feel free to pass them on and I'm more than happy to answer, especially probably if you want to know a bit more about degree apprenticeships or about what I do, then I'm more than happy to help and answer. I think it's really useful to sort of have that.
So I've just added a link into the chat box, which is a feedback link. If you do have any questions once we've ended the session, you can add some comments in there and we will pass them on. One question has just popped up. So how competitive is getting into the degree apprenticeships? Is it quite a competitive industry?
Yeah, so I'd say it's still an up and coming one. So now is probably the best time to sort of still get in there before. I think loads of people still don't know about it, still don't know it exists. It is a competitive space, but definitely don't let that put you off. You know, if you're passionate and dedicated and you think this really is for you, that does come across and you have a really, really good chance of going for it. I'd say sort of if you're in year 13 now, it's just a good time to look. We're not the only company that offer them. You know, I'm all for AstraZeneca, absolutely love it, couldn't recommend it more, but I know there are other pharmaceuticals that offer the same scheme, for example, GSK, which is another big one. And I think there's loads of smaller ones too, sort of as I'm at uni now, you kind of speaking to people and everyone's from loads of different companies. So there's definitely loads out there. Just do your research and don't be put off by the fact that maybe it's a bit of a different application process to uni. Just do your best, have confidence in yourself, and you'll be absolutely fine.
That's lovely. Thank you ever so much. There are no more questions, so I'm going to stop the recording now.